My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Up until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. Dun, dun, dun.
Da da da, love it.
Love it.
The gods are real, like the Greek gods.
Like the ones you learned about but weren't paying attention to. Well, they don't pay attention to you either, especially if you're their kid.
Hey, Dale.
Hey, Amanda.
We're going to Camp Half-Blood today.
I can't wait. I'm pumped.
I'm pumped too. And obviously, we're talking about Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief,
Yeah.
which, contrary to popular belief, I think has a pretty big millennial following, right?
Yeah. Well, it's such an epic adventure series.
It is. And fun fact about me, I love Greek mythology. So this is based on a kid living in the city, New York City. Obviously,
Yeah.
New York City.
Yeah.
Who's constantly getting kicked out of school and is like
He's in so much trouble
all the time. And you find out that is because he is a demigod. His dad is Poseidon.
Yeah.
What a fun premise for a series.
It's incredible.
You read this when it first came out in 2005,
I did.
which made you
Well,
a
that's
junior.
not true. I didn't read it as soon as it came out, but
Okay.
I did read it soon after it had been out for a little bit. Yeah. So 2005 is when it was published, and I was a junior in high school.
I didn't read it until I was probably like 19, 20 years old.
Really?
And what's funny is a couple of my friends and I loved it so much, whole ass grown adults.
Yeah.
We went to, when the movie came out, we went to the opening day in Camp Half-Blood shirts that we bought at Hot Topic.
Incredible.
And we were hands down the oldest people in that movie theater, probably older than the parents that were in that movie theater.
That's awesome.
And it's something, so I reread it to get ready for this episode. It is a beautiful story of kids that don't feel
like they belong.
Yeah. and they have ADHD
Mhm.
and they have learning disabilities and they may not fit into that perfect school structure the way that
Yeah.
Percy just keeps getting kicked out. And the reason he keeps getting kicked out and he doesn't fit into it because he's a demigod.
Yeah, duh.
And imagine reading this as a little kid with severe ADD or severe ADHD or dyslexia. They talk about dyslexia so much.
Yes.
And feeling seen and like these are not disabilities, they are superpowers, which
Yeah.
as you get older, I have very bad ADHD. It's my superpower.
Yeah.
Yes, it's caused so much strife and hardship in my life, but I can do other things so much better than people that are not neurodivergent can.
Yeah.
And I wish I had had something like this when I was little to make me not feel
It's true. Like
not
having
smart.
that, like
Yeah.
you're included and you're a part.
for sure.
And I think with all of that, there's a really cool story about the author of this book. But before we dive into that,
Okay.
what are we sipping on
Okay,
today?
I'm so glad you asked because this is one of my favorites. So, in the book, they talk about the nectar that you drink when you're
Yes.
hurt, right? You can
Uh-huh.
eat the ambrosia or you drink the nectar. And so the nectar looks like apple juice on ice, but it tastes different to everybody. And so the book opens, right? And Percy gets hurt and then he ends up at Camp Half-Blood and he has nectar in a cup next to him. And the girl sitting next to him was like, what does it taste like to you? Or I think it was
Yeah.
Grover was like, what does this taste like to you?
Yeah.
And he says it tastes like warm chocolate chip cookies. And he's like, ooh, I'm jealous. So it tastes different for every single person. It tastes like their favorite flavor in the world.
Incredible.
And it was his mom's chocolate chip cookies. So that's what we went for today. We're drinking the nectar of the gods. Glassware, you're going to grab a rocks glass. And of course, this is my personal favorite. We're going to grab some bourbon, some brown butter syrup, and some cookie butter syrup, which you don't have to make yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a bartending nerd, so I do, but I know Monin, a couple of these like mixer companies make them. And some chocolate bitters and white creme de cocoa. So
Ooh.
it's not like white like milky, it's white
Yeah.
like clear.
Okay.
And you're going to take 2 ounces of bourbon to ice and add all the deliciousness in there. Stir it up. I say you garnish with some ambrosia if you can get your hands on it. But if you're not at Camp Half-Blood, a warm chocolate chip cookie will do. And
Perfect.
That's what we're drinking today. So cheers. Back to what we were talking about.
Yeah. So I found this really fascinating. I didn't know this until literally we were doing a little bit of research for this episode of the pod, is that the author, Rick
Riordan.
Yeah.
I never
Glad
say
you
his
pronounce that.
I mispronounced his name for so many years until this got popular again with the new Disney
and
Plus
you like
show.
heard someone saying it.
Yeah.
So this is a really sweet story. So apparently the author has a son, and the son always loved bedtime stories about Greek gods. And his son, Rick's son, was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia.
Gonna make you cry.
And so, like, incredible.
Yeah.
But what's really fun is so it's basically like Rick was telling his son these stories because his son was learning about Greek gods in school.
Oh.
And so it got to a point where, like, obviously at a certain point you run out of stories.
Of course.
And so his son was like, hey, Dad, just make them up. Make up a story. And thus, this
makes me
series.
love it so much more.
I know. And I said the same thing. I was like, the fact that, like, his son was like, hey, it's okay, Dad. Like, just come up with your own story. I was like, that is so special. And it, like, makes you love the character because he came up with Percy. I think it's loosely based on his
son. I love that so much. Wait, does that mean that he thinks of himself as Poseidon?
Well, that's where it gets a little,
that's
you know, like
little,
he's never voiced that the son was the inspiration behind the character, just that he loved traveling and he loved telling stories, and then his son obviously was. And so thus Percy Jackson was created.
I mean, we're just going to talk about The Lightning Thief today, but just to talk about the book series, I tore through them, right? So they're young adult.
Yeah.
And they're technically they fall under young reader.
Yeah. I would say more so
yeah.
than young adult even. Yeah.
I tore through the whole series. It was incredible. And then I even went on to do the ones that are based on Egyptian mythology. And then, like, there's so many more spin-offs that he did of this, and they're such easy reads.
Yeah.
But kind of this was brought back to life with the Disney Plus show that just came out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, this, because this is a newer book, the show and the movie kind of all coincide very closely together because they all were kind of created just a couple of years apart from each other. And I think, like, there's so many, you know, books obviously are constantly being made into series or movies or whatever. Obviously, that's what we talk about on this podcast.
Hence the podcast.
But I really appreciated obviously the movie is one thing, but the series that came out just recently, it's a 2023 new series, and the first season wrapped up, and it was incredible. And I think, like, there was a little bit of pushback, I think, because
I didn't give it a fair shake, guys. I did not give it a fair shake.
I think, like, some people love the book so much that diving, and also there's, like, a nostalgia of the movie, like you talking about going opening night to see the movie. Like, there's a definite love for that. And so anytime something's remade again, but you're, like, a true fan of the original, it's hard to get into something like this. But this show, for me at least, I watched with my son, who is 11.
Yeah.
And, like, it was like rereading the book for the first time.
And he loves it.
He loves it. And it also, like, just opened up his passion for reading more because he's very much like a graphic novel kid right now, which is all the kids today.
You know, there's a Percy Jackson graphic novel. It's fantastic.
But I got him the novels because I wanted him to, like,
for sure,
experience. And he loves it. And he does, like, the audiobook and all this stuff. And so I think, like, this generation having this series is just going to create even more readers, which is
I agree.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
And at that age, like,
it's the perfect time to be a reader, especially this kind of reading where it's like real life problems that are happening to kids their age, because you're 12 in the book.
Yeah.
And
so much happens.
So much happens at that age. It is just, you don't know what the hell is happening to your hormones and your life, and friends are growing up faster than you are, and you're kind of stuck in the little kid world, and you know, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I think this is a beautiful exploration of, you know, escaping into a fantasy where it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And it's a beautiful story of, like, as you kind of leave childhood, the adventures you go on, the new friends
Peter
you
Pan
make.
Vibe. Yeah.
And even Harry Potter. Like,
I know.
He makes these two friends, obviously, like
Grover and Annabeth.
Yeah, and like you're not really sure who they are at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in the book, you don't know if they're the good guys or the bad guys, because there's a lot of like unknown in the story.
I know, but Grover to me is like, oh, that's not true, because maybe I'm just saying that in this reread because I know how adorable Grover is, but he's just so damn adorable.
He also reminds me so much of like Tumnus.
Tumnus, 100%. And also, he's got like a Dobby vibe.
Yes.
This is so unrelated, but have you seen the pictures of Timothée Chalamet? He wore this like red jumpsuit. He looks fantastic. But everyone's like, why are we not talking about this? And it cuts to Mr. Tumnus in the red scarf.
Stop.
Okay, it's completely unrelated, but it made me laugh really hard when I just saw it. So I'm going to say this. Mm-hmm. Yes, the movie had holes.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even get Clarice, which is the daughter of Ares.
Yeah.
We don't even get Clarice.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah.
But we get her in the show, and let me tell you, that is so damn perfectly cast.
Oh, it's incredible.
She was like the Clarice in my head.
Yeah.
100%. I will say, the girl that they cast for Annabeth in the show is an incredible actress.
Yeah.
But she was too
There's something
nice.
off.
She was too nice, you know, and too pretty.
She's too trusting from the first time you meet her. And she's not supposed to be.
Annabeth, she's supposed to be like this blonde, curly haired.
She's the daughter of
Athena.
So like, obviously, and I think that's hard when you're casting and you're trying to be diverse and you're trying to include a lot of people. It's really easy to like,
for sure,
get caught up in that. But I think sometimes it's, I don't know. It's tricky.
I could not believe what a good actress she was.
She's incredible.
She's incredible.
Yes.
Now, Alexandra Daddario, who is in the movie, she had the you know, Annabeth's supposed to have grayish blue eyes. Like she's supposed to look the way that
she's supposed to look like a god.
Yeah, and I get what they were going for with her because she's such a naturally gorgeous person.
Yeah.
But she also was too old. She looked so much older than she was supposed to. I think that's a theme.
All of those in the movie.
A theme in the movie. They're just way too old.
Yeah.
The kid that played Percy, whose name I can't remember right now, he was...
In the movie or in the show?
In the movie.
Yeah.
He was for sure way too old.
He was way too old.
But I loved his Percy.
It was like the teenager version of Percy Jackson.
loved his Percy.
Yes.
He's
adorable. He's a very likable character.
He should have been cast as Percy in book 3 or 4.
Right. Yep, I agree.
The kid that's in the show is fantastic. His little squeaky puberty voice.
So I went into the show not knowing what to expect, not really sure if it was going to be good, whatever. Just from the preview of the show, I was immediately sold on that character because he was Percy. Like when I was reading it, this kid was who I was envisioning.
100%.
And that's incredible because like I feel like a lot of people felt that way.
And that is Walker Scobell is who plays Percy Jackson. And just to back up, Leah Jeffries plays Annabeth Chase and Arian Simhadri plays Grover, who is just
fantastic. He also that's who I picture.
But I will say movie Grover is also who I pictured. Like if they would have cast Grover as a white kid, I would have been like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like that's not adding up.
Yeah.
I think too that in the show, because they do follow so much more closely to the book, in the movie we knew it was going to take liberties. And it was a movie, so there's only so much they can fit in it.
I mean, right off the bat, like I'll be totally honest, I hated the movie, but I didn't see it until probably 3 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
For the first time.
You can't watch the show first and then the movie?
Yeah.
Because you're going to hate it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure I saw, what year did the movie come out? Was it 2011?
I'm not sure, but I'll double check it.
Because I almost feel like I did see it, but I don't remember it like at all, which means I didn't enjoy it.
2010 it came out.
Okay. So fair. That makes sense. So then
5.9 rating.
And I think in its own like little world, it's its own thing. It's not the book. Like, do not watch that movie expecting the book because 100%. It is not at all.
It's there in the sense that the ideas and the major plot points are there, but especially, I know we're not talking about it, but Sea of Monsters.
Yeah.
What in the that has nothing to do with the book at all.
That's wild.
I'm watching the movie and I'm like, it's not even a part. It's not even like they cut something. This never happened.
Yeah.
But
also,
I guess that happens.
Why are they looking for marbles?
That was a bit unexplained.
If someone is listening to this and has not read Percy Jackson, the whole premise of Percy Jackson is that he is on an adventure.
He's on his quest.
Sorry. Correct. That's the right word.
Yeah.
To find Zeus's golden
lightning bolt.
In the movie, that is not what he's searching for. So you can already tell that, like, it's going to be its own thing.
Yes.
And I think there's, like, an appreciation for, like, whoever directed and wrote this movie that, like, clearly they were just going to be taking their own, like, take on
liberties,
the movie.
For sure.
Like, there was definitely no... And to be fair, maybe there's a reason they went that way. Like, they wanted it to be its own thing.
Yeah. And a movie doesn't have the time that a show does.
Exactly. And there's a lot of character. Like, you
so
don't...
much plot. It's very plot heavy.
Even in the series, you don't get all of the backstory of the characters. Like, one of the biggest backstories for me personally that I found interesting in the series was the stepdad.
Gabe. Yeah.
And, like, I felt... It was a weird character because in the show, you don't hate him. You don't like him, but you don't hate him. In the book,
he is
hate him.
POS. Yeah.
And
abusive, physically, mentally.
Exactly. And I think, like, obviously it's a Disney Plus show. And so clearly they went the route of, like, that's a really complicated plot line.
Sure.
That, like, maybe isn't going to hit well. So let's just make it more, like, I felt like he was more comedic. Like,
absolutely.
His role was definitely like a lighter, like,
nerdy. And
like
he's supposed to be so stinky and like.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just like the gross,
stinky,
greasy,
gross. Yeah. But in the book, he's mean. Like,
he's abusive.
He's abusive and awful. And the fact that Sally Jackson, Percy's mom, stays with him because he smells so bad to mask monsters, so monsters won't smell Percy.
You don't know that if you've watched either of the two.
Yeah.
And I think, like, that's such a cool little thing because it goes to so many of, like, the books that we have read. Yeah. And I think, like, that's a detail that, how do you put that into the show, right? Like, how do you make that come across unless you're reading it on a book or in a book?
Yeah. And also he's supposed to be like, I don't want to say he doesn't steal, but like Percy comes home from school before he goes to Camp Half-Blood.
Yeah.
And he swindles him out of whatever money he has to go gamble away and like play poker with. And then when Percy's on his quest and Sally's in the underworld, he's on every news station with a mistress who's his grief counselor.
Yeah.
And he's getting all this money and all this TV time and all these endorsements. And he's like really capitalizing and saying that Percy's like a murderer.
Yeah.
And I think Rick Riordan does a really good job of teetering the line between, in the book, these are really big adult conversations.
Absolutely.
In a young reader's book that some of the kids reading this book have that abusive stepdad at home, have a mom who's sacrificed everything just to keep her kids safe.
Yeah.
And I get why he leaves those big things in there.
Yeah.
I see also why Disney Plus didn't put them in there.
Right.
But having read the book, this is one where I absolutely say a lot of people that haven't read the book and have just watched a Disney Plus show, you're missing a whole bunch.
Yes.
And it's not like with some of the other books and stuff that we've talked about where it's like, oh, it's just so much more romantic to read the book or something. You're missing a lot of plot. Yeah. They definitely rectify it in the show compared to the movie. Are you kidding me?
Here's a question to throw out there. Does it feel the same as when you read and watch Harry Potter?
No. But that's a different experience for me.
Yeah.
That's a very different experience. I have that emotional tie to Harry Potter, but...
To the books.
To the books, yeah.
And then also the movies.
Of course, yeah. But...
I was just curious, because it's like one of those...
very similar in the way that one thing I loved about the show and the movie, you know how when you read books that are high fantasy or have some fantasy aspects to it, my favorite thing to do is to envision that world in my head.
Yeah.
And the cabins of all the demigods that are for each god. I love that they're different on the inside, and I loved that the movies look different than the shows look different.
Yeah.
Because in my head, it was so fun trying to figure out the way that each cabin looked like. And when Percy goes into his cabin in the show, you kind of don't get anything. I was bummed. I was like, I wanted so much more. They do a better job in the movie.
Yeah. There's way more world building and like set in the book than there is in the actual.
For sure. Yeah. But it's so plot heavy.
Yeah.
For what they were trying to do. One thing I will say is Dionysus. Hold on. I always called him Dionysus.
Yeah, I did too. I was going to say, wait, who are you talking about?
Show,
I know they say the different way.
And I was like, is that, and I took Greek mythology in college 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I was like, am I doing this wrong?
I don't know.
But Jason Mantzoukas in the show, are you kidding me? Could not be more perfect.
Yeah.
He's so freaking funny.
There were a lot of like big actor drops.
Megan Mullally plays Alecto.
And Hamilton.
It's
like
so
there's
funny.
So many. And I actually, this is like a little note that I made because like I don't know why I didn't realize this until I rewatched it. But in the movie, Owen from Grey's Anatomy is Poseidon.
I know, and he's so hot.
How on this earth did
so hot.
He's beautiful.
I see him as Poseidon.
Like I loved Owen until he went all weird. But like I'm a big Grey's Anatomy
Me too.
fan.
I'm rewatching it right now. It's a really big project.
Yeah, it's quite the project, but you need to if you're going to finish it out to the final, you know?
That's why I'm doing it. Yeah.
And fair. I probably should do the same. But when I realized, I was like, how did I watch this movie and not realize that he was...
Do you think he's a better Poseidon than, what's his name? Which I have to get right now.
If I'm being honest, I didn't see him as Poseidon. I think that's why I kind of forgot that he was Poseidon.
Because he's Owen.
Whereas not even that, like I can separate him because I've seen him in other things too, but the guy that they cast for the Poseidon, he felt like he was Poseidon. I appreciated him.
Yeah, agreed.
He's very like, he just had the right look.
I do like that they had Edge, the wrestler, play Ares.
I didn't know that.
It's hilarious.
That was a new thing that I, discovered from chatting with some of our other podcasters.
Our big wrestling fans.
I did not know that. I wouldn't have known that until someone said that. That's really fun.
When it comes to the book, because we haven't really talked about the plot of the book, but essentially he's a demigod and they go to this place called Camp Half-Blood.
For anyone that doesn't know what a demigod is.
It's when one of their parents is a god and the other is a mortal. In Percy's case, his mom, Sally Jackson, the mortal. His dad eventually claims him as Poseidon.
Yeah.
So then
and in the book,
there's some stories that kind of unfold in the book, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about, Annabeth's mom is Athena. Grover is a satyr. So Grover is Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah.
He is a satyr who's spending his life trying to get his seeker's license so he can go out and find Pan, the lost satyr, who ran away because the humans are ruining the earth and satyrs love the earth, which is like the funniest storyline.
Well, also, remind me, because I can't remember, because I've watched too many versions and also read the book for the reread.
Maybe.
Because I think it's the book. It's terrible that I can't remember which one it is now. How does Percy find out who his father is? Because I thought
it's
in the book...
It's different. In the book, the movie, and the show.
Perfect.
It's all different.
Okay. That's what I was like, I can't remember how he finds out in the book.
In the book, it's Capture the Flag.
Yes.
And it's very similar in the fact that Clarice corners him.
Yes.
And they're fighting.
Okay.
And he's got cuts on him. And he's like, wait, the rule is no maiming.
Okay.
And then he breaks her like rod from Ares. And she freaks the fuck out because her dad is Ares.
Right.
And so he falls back into the creek. And he notices when he falls in the creek, all of his like cuts are completely healed.
Like the water cure. Right.
And he can control the water. And he yeah. So
in the show, it's similar. There's like,
but he gets claimed right there in the show.
Yeah.
Where in the book he goes back to the camp.
Okay,
and then
that's right.
He gets claimed.
Yep. Okay,
and in the movie, I don't even remember.
It's all coming back.
I don't remember
now.
what it is in the movie to become. Back to me now.
I don't.
Celine always gets.
If I'm being honest, I don't remember the movie. The only thing I remember is the marbles.
Which we need to talk about. It's like one of my most favorite part of the book. And they did a great job in the show, is they're going across country because the underworld is under Los Angeles, which is the funniest freaking thing, that the underworld is under Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's where Hades is.
Yeah.
And where all the gods live is in the Empire State Building on the 600th floor.
Mm-hmm.
Completely adds up. So
fantastic.
Olympus. Why did I just say where the gods live? It's Mount Olympus.
Yeah.
And
I mean, everyone knew.
Clearly. And I just love that they made hell basically under LA. So they're going cross country to get to the underworlds because he thinks that Hades stole the bolt of lightning. And
because he's told that.
He's told.
Yeah.
He gets stuck. They go to this place in the desert that's essentially I wouldn't say casino because it is a casino, but it's more like a giant arcade casino.
Yeah. But in like the movie, it's a casino. And in the show, it's
a casino. It's kind of described as a casino arcade. But they go in and they're like, oh, we don't have money. And they're like, no, it's taken care of.
Yeah.
Here's your unlimited $1 billion card and your wonderful room and go have fun. But then they lose time. Yeah. And all of a sudden it's been 5 days.
Well,
They've got, in the book, they've got the card.
Yeah.
That's like unlimited plays. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I just love, especially the book and the show, the way that they do those scenes. Yeah. It's my dream. I wish this would happen to me.
Well, they're given what? Cookies or drinks?
Drinks? I don't remember. I think it's cookies.
Because it starts to mess with their
concept of time.
Yeah. Is it the lotus?
The lotus, yeah. I almost said the White Lotus. That's the Can We Talk About episode.
That's so different.
And what a fun thing for a little kid to be like, oh my God, I wish. Because they talked to the one guys from the 70s, the other guys from 1993, and they're like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
In the book, Grover's playing the deer hunter game where you're the deer hunting humans.
That's hilarious.
Because he wants to hunt down the human. It's like just a cute, funny little thing. And I love the way that they portrayed it in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Movie, not so much. Not so much.
Again, creative freedom.
Uh-huh.
They took a lot of that.
A lot of that.
There was a lot of that.
One thing I will say, though, is if they're going to continue this on the Disney Channel, which I think they will, because it had a great success.
It did.
It did really well.
Yeah.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And I did say to you in the beginning, I was like, I don't like it. And I had only watched 2 episodes. And I was like, I don't want to. And you convinced me and I finished it. And I was like, that was fantastic.
I think what helped my situation is obviously it's a kid-driven show.
Sure.
Like, anyone going into this know that this is definitely, the audience is definitely the younger generation.
Absolutely.
But I went into it watching it with my son. And just his excitement for it was like,
that's so cute.
It's kind of like the whole, like, you know, they say like once you have kids, like all the things that you loved as a kid come back to life.
Yeah.
Because your kid is enjoying it for the first time kind of thing. And
like
that was
your husband constantly trying to convince him that 80s and 90s movies are really good and he hates them.
He hates them so much. Yeah. And I think like that definitely impacted. I think if you have like a kid that you can watch this with, it just adds an extra like excitement. And like, you know, then me rereading the book also just kind of put me back in that like headspace of like, because you lose a little bit of that, like, I don't even know what the word is, but you lose a little bit of your imagination as you get older and all that stuff. And so like reading these books, they're so well, like this book is really well written. And for like a young kid to dive into these books, like it just opens up that world. And then you have this show that, because we live in such a visual world where everything is screens, I think it's a really nice way to introduce your kids to the world of the fantasy world of like reading, and like if you
being able to create your imagination.
Exactly. And if you like the show, it's so easy to dive into the book because the book has so much more in it. And that's exactly what I did with my kid, is like we watched the series, but he was reading the book while we watched the episodes.
That's
and
so
like
cute.
We'd watch an episode and then he'd go to bed that night and he'd listen to the book on audiobook, and then he also had the physical book that he could read. And he would get so excited when he'd be like, oh my gosh, like this is the same title, like this chapter's the same title as the episode we just watched. And then he'd pick up on like little details that were in the book that weren't in the show, or vice versa, like the way they did things differently. And I was like, how fun is that?
Especially because we've talked about this a lot in the show, is like, if I can, I'm always going to read the book first, right?
Yes.
But we also grew up in a generation that we needed our imaginations because it was not visual.
Yeah.
Not in this way. I mean, can you imagine if they made this in 1990? It would be a show.
And
it'd be terrifying.
AI. Hello, AI.
Terrifying. So they don't have to use their imagination as much as we did.
Right.
So I can totally see a kid wanting, like your kid did, watching it and being like, this is so good. Now I want to read the book.
Yeah.
And they can use their imagination to visualize all the other things that are in this book, because there is a lot of plot, a lot of moments that are not quite, they're there in the show.
Yeah.
Not there in the movie.
Yeah.
Although I will say, the one scene in the movie that goes so freaking hard every time I watch it, this looks so fun, is when they're doing the training at the camp in the beginning of the movie, and it's like they're just battling. There's that big giant wooden thing swinging around. I'm like, this looks incredible. I want to go to this.
I also like, I appreciate, like, obviously the casting of the movie is interesting, but I always find it so funny, like with Annabeth.
Yes.
Like, I love the shots where it's just literally her staring and it's just her eyes. And it's just supposed to, like,
I know.
There's so much more dialogue in the book to, like, so much of that. And obviously the movie is very different than the book. But, like,
very different.
They're trying to, like, set this, like, I don't even know. Just, there's something to her, right? But it's never explained.
Poor Alexandra Daddario. She's basically, they just cast her for her eyeball.
Yeah.
But Logan Lerman is the young man who plays Percy in that one.
They really like zoom in on her eyes, and like the final scene of the movie where they like go back to the camp and they're doing the final fight scene.
The big old fight.
And she's fighting like whoever she's fighting. I don't know. It's not important. And then it's just like her face.
I mean, she's like, gorgeous. I get it.
We get it.
I get it.
Her eyes are beautiful. Lovely.
Also, I will say in the book, you know, the whole storyline of how I always pronounce it Talia, but in the show they pronounce it Thalia. But Talia, who is Zeus's daughter.
Yeah.
Who, the way that Percy kind of calls out the plot holes.
Yeah.
As a character in the book and in the show. Mm-hmm. He's like, wait, Zeus wanted to keep his daughter alive, so to save her, he turned her into a tree?
Yeah.
He couldn't just save her as a person?
Yeah.
Like, Rick Riordan does such a good job of being like, yes, I'm aware that there's going to be somebody reading this being like, wait a minute. Right. But there's, you know, and kind of pokes fun at it, which is like, he also knows that adults are going to be reading this.
Yeah.
Like, there's
clearly
we've talked. I don't know if we've talked about it on here, but I know we have talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I love YA books.
Yeah,
I love them. Mm-hmm. They're, I'll read some stuff that's definitely not YA.
Palate cleansers.
Palate cleansers, if you will. Something's getting clean, and it's the pipes. And you don't necessarily like books that they consider YA. I'm like, are you serious? Yeah. You know, ACOTAR is considered YA?
No. Mm-mm.
How?
Yeah.
How?
But here's my other thing with that is
Harry Potter considered young reader or YA?
I thought it was young reader, but maybe that's changed.
I don't know. I think it is young reader.
But ACOTAR is one of those books where I'm like, what's interesting about that is I never ever want to be the person to be like, oh, that should not be in a kid's library. And so the fact that it is considered young adult, I think is up to the discretion of each kid and their family.
For sure. I mean, if young adult goes till 16, 17, yeah, that adds up.
Exactly. And I think like reading stuff that you don't necessarily understand, it's kind of just part of like learning.
That's
like,
how you learn.
So much of
what if you're not comfortable talking to your parents?
Exactly.
Dayelle.
And there's like a certain level of like, you can read anything in a book, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to like putting books in certain categories, it doesn't mean that that's who's going to be reading it.
For sure. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like it's a tricky...
I can totally see this as young reader.
Yeah.
And
as the books go on too, like this first book, obviously he's 12 years old, right?
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot going on there. But obviously as the books go on.
Some romance buds.
Exactly.
Some relationships happen.
Exactly.
And you get that with Luke, who we haven't talked about at all, but Luke, who is the camper, who is the son of Apollo, like the forgotten group of kids whose dads, whatever, but they
don't claim them.
They don't
or whatever.
claim them, so they kind of take everybody in because they shepherd all of the lost souls.
Right.
And Luke eventually kind of betrays everybody.
Yeah.
But that's a friendship betrayal that kids have to deal with. You do lose friendships, and friends do betray you.
It's very true. It's interesting too because there's a plot line. I don't know if that's the right word. There's a part where before they all go out on this adventure, like before Percy goes, he goes to see the Oracle. Oracle?
Yes. And it's so funny. He's like, you look like a Halloween costume.
Yeah. And the fact that he's told that he's going to be betrayed by one of his friends.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I read the book, that was constantly in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is true, but I think in the show you find like you don't feel that as much as when you're reading the book. Like the show it definitely tells you about it, right? Like they go and he talks to the Oracle and stuff, but it doesn't
dwell on it like the book does.
He brings it up like I think like one more time when they're in the house with Medusa, and he's like explaining something or talking about a situation where he's like, the Oracle told me one of my friends was going to betray me. I think that's when that conversation happens. But in the book, like you know this the whole time, but I don't remember there being like a conversation until you find out who actually.
Yeah, it's more like in the back of Percy's, because you lose, of course, just like any other book to show, you lose the inner monologue.
Right.
That Percy has, but you hear him say to himself all the time, like, well, Annabeth did this. Is she going to betray me? Right. I trust Grover. Right. That's why I chose him. I don't think he would ever betray me, but, he is trying to get a seeker's license. So he already failed his first mission because he was the protector for Annabeth and Luke and Talia's first mission. So, request, sorry. So, I don't know. There's like a definite, I don't want to say change, but you don't hate Luke you hate Luke so much in the book when he betrays Percy. Yeah. Because throughout the book, Percy has guilt for not choosing Luke and misses Luke and wants to know how Luke's doing. And
in the show, you don't get that at all.
You don't get that at all.
No. And then when it actually happens, when the betraying happens, it's just kind of like, wait, what?
What the heck just happened? And
that's so random.
Annabeth has crush on him, and you don't really get that in the show as much as you do in the book.
Which, again, think about the age group.
But I also think that's important.
It is.
To talk about
how do you show that?
Yeah, that's true.
The tricky part. It's like, how do you get that to come across?
Long glances.
You don't have that inner monologue.
Yeah.
And they're so awkward because they're 12.
One of the things I absolutely freaking love in this book is how they FaceTime each other before FaceTiming was like a super popular thing.
Yeah.
But they FaceTime each other with their little rainbows, like a car wash.
Yeah.
And they FaceTime Luke. It's like the funniest thing. They're like, we just got to turn the car wash on, get a rainbow, and use our iris messaging.
Yeah.
Which is like IMing, I guess. I don't know what it was, but it's before FaceTiming.
Yeah.
And Annabeth's so nervous in the book because she's like, looks like shit because she's been on the road for 2 weeks. And Luke pops up and she's like, oh my God, she's trying to fix her hair and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh. I remember being that young when you have those innocent crushes that just don't mean anything. And something else I loved about Annabeth's storyline, which I'm sure resonates with a lot of kids, is her dad was a West Point professor and wanted nothing to do with her and had this new stepmom and this new life.
And you don't get that in the movie or the show.
Important in the book.
Yeah.
Like, you're so happy for Annabeth in the end when she gets to go home and be with her dad.
You don't get any of that backstory.
No.
Which is like, again, it's one of those things where like the book and the movie sidebar show and the book, they all are such different experiences.
Yeah. And maybe we will get maybe they're going to borrow from the first things in the first book that people are like, I wish you would have explained this, and to start off the second season.
Right. I mean, that's fair because I think obviously when you're doing a show or a movie or anything, you only have so much time.
Yeah.
You can't possibly fit all of these details into an hour long, half hour long, whatever.
Never.
And then it's too much. It's almost like you can't consume visually what you're consuming on a paper the way, like, it's just not going to hit.
It's never going to add up, of course.
Because
absolutely.
like there's so many details that like wouldn't make sense if they just threw them into the show. Whereas like when you're reading them, obviously you can absorb that a lot better.
I think I just realized something though, like Percy Jackson getting its redemption arc with this series is kind of the first one to do this.
Yeah.
So we just found out that Twilight's getting a new series, but it's going to be animated, which I know that there's a whole generation of people that really love that. I don't think I will. Full disclosure, we'll revisit that when we do the next Twilight episode.
And is that finalized?
Yes.
Did we get the finalized?
It
makes sense. Anime is so big.
I know. It's just not my jam.
Well,
and that's okay.
Wrong generation.
We are too old.
But we'll watch it.
And Harry Potter is getting its comeuppance with the series.
2026.
I know. So I think that they were the first really series of this kind of genre to get a series and prove what a series can do. Like, people hard on the Percy Jackson movie.
Yeah.
So I think that they really do like come down on the movie.
Yeah.
So hard. But there are things about the movie that kept Percy Jackson alive. So I'm just going to say this in a roundabout way. Yeah. I don't think the show would exist if the movie hadn't.
True.
You know what I mean? Because plenty of kids went to go see the Percy Jackson movie, never having read the book.
You have to fail before you can succeed.
And like for me, I was like, all right, well, it wasn't the best, but I loved it. I loved going to see it. That was so exciting.
Right.
I just don't know that. I mean, as the books progress, the content gets more and more difficult to put on a screen.
Fair.
You know, that
I think about, like, for example, another show that it wasn't a book, I don't believe. I could be very wrong with this. I should do a little research. But like the way like Stranger Things was such a huge thing, and the same idea where obviously completely different. There's no comparison, obviously, but I think the way the show starts to where the show is now, worlds apart.
As it should be, right? Because the kids are growing up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they're dealing with so many different things that you would deal with as you grow up.
It's a great point.
And I think, like, obviously it's different storylines, everything is different, but there's still that one thing where it's like you start with these kids and then they mature, stuff changes, kids grow up. things become more complicated and messy. I mean, even Harry Potter is another example of you start with these very young kids who are dealing with things when they're young, but then those things change and they grow and
get more serious and more adult.
Yeah, they start feeling feelings they don't understand, and like there's so many layers.
So much to say about that. And I also think that with Percy Jackson, I don't think people hated the first movie as much until the second movie came out.
Yeah.
And Sea of Monsters, everybody, like, we'll talk about Sea of Monsters probably after the second season comes out, but
I've never seen it.
It is so bad.
Yeah.
It made me really upset because I was like, this is so
You had high
bad.
hopes. Yeah.
It made me, like, all the stuff I forgave in the first movie made me mad because, like, oh, they're just going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just budgetary.
Fair.
This isn't a time constraint. Like, they just don't give a poo-poo about the plot.
They were like, no.
So, I don't know. I hope that this continues in that direction of continuing on because the show is awesome. And they did a good job casting really young kids.
Mm-hmm. Which is key.
Because they're going to grow older.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine if they kept making the movies with these like 18-year-olds?
Well, and I think that's the thing is I think they started out, and also maybe there's a little bit of like kids are hard to cast because
Very true.
You need someone who is going to dedicate their life
to that role.
And like it's easy for these bigger budget shows and films and stuff, but when you have like a smaller budget, which the movie probably did, they probably didn't have a huge budget to work with. I don't think
Disney.
The movie was?
I don't think it was Disney.
Because did they work with the author for the movie?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't think they did. And so like I think there's a lot of like there's definitely, you know, you kind of have to work with what you've got. And I think
for
like
sure.
They did what they did to get a movie out there. Obviously they wanted to tell a story. It's not the book, but it is its own thing.
For sure. And the kid Walker Scoble that plays Percy in the show, I saw him in The Adam Project, which was such a good movie.
That's an excellent movie.
And he killed it.
Yeah.
So when I saw that he was cast as Percy, I was like, oh, come on. He's about as perfect as it gets.
Yeah.
And he was perfection.
He's excellent.
Yeah, he's going to be great. So I'm really excited. I know that they were picked up for a second season. So I can't wait to see that. I am just a little bit nervous, but
yeah.
Sea of Monsters is a great book.
Yeah.
It's going to be visually very, very fun.
Yeah.
And I think that once everybody forgives the movie and continues to be elated about the show.
I think, and I think maybe just like separating that. Like the movie is its own thing. Don't go into it thinking you're going to get the book.
Exactly.
And same thing with the show. Like if you've read the book, dive into the show. But if you haven't read the book yet, read the book first.
Okay, so this is where we come to at the end.
Yeah. Sorry,
Dayelle,
I jumped ahead.
No. Dayelle, watch it or read it.
I would read it.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. And that is not to say that the show was not incredible.
Yeah.
But to me, the book just offers so much more.
It takes you to a different place. It puts you in the world and you devour it. It's one of those books that you, like once you start reading it, you don't want to put it down.
You're done in 5 hours.
And I'm an adult.
So.
And I still feel the same way about it.
Same.
So.
All right. That might be our first watch it only.
I know. I think it might be.
I mean, read it only. Actually, no, that's not true. Twilight.
Yeah. But Twilight. Here's the thing too, like I think that's the only like you can absolutely watch it. It's a great watch. Like it is so good. But I think if you're truly wanting to get the full experience, just read it.
Read it.
You can't go wrong with reading it.
You can't.
I love it.
Me too. So enjoy your cocktails, enjoy your Nectar of the Gods. And if you haven't already, head over to our socials, Watch It or Read It Pod on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we're on the Tick and the Talk.
Yes, we are.
And like we said, follow us. And wherever you listen to your podcast, if you guys could just give us a little reviewy and subscribe to us, it helps us so much so that we can keep doing all this fun stuff. And send us your recommendations.
Yeah, we want to know.
We want to know what you guys want to talk about.
Yeah.
And also, if you have a recommendation and you want to make sure we talk about something, send us what you want us to. We will discuss in detail.
Send Send it our way.
Send it away. All right, thanks.
Bye.
Our editor is Katie Yonner. Our associate producer is Grace Heerman. Our production coordinator is Nicole Vargas, and our senior content producer is Kyle Bosch. Our executive producer is Tommy West, and Watch It or Read It is produced by Gotham West Studios.